AM 96.3 FM, The Source.
Dr. Peter Toth is on the phone. He's a researcher and the director of preventive cardiology at CGH Medical Center, and he's talking to us about something he specializes in, cardiovascular disease. Did you know it's the leading cause of death? Leading cause of death. Dr. Toth's new research points to high triglycerides as an identifier of heart disease risk, and I don't even know what a triglyceride is, Robin, do you?
No.
Dr. Peter Toth, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good, Larry. How you doing?
I'm good. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm in Sterling, Illinois.
All right.
Northwestern Illinois. Very rural.
How's the weather?
Lots of soybeans and corn.
Soybeans and corn. Yes. Soybeans have a smell to them, don't they? You can smell them.
Oh, not really.
No? So what is triglyceride? What is a triglyceride? What is that?
Yeah, so a triglyceride is a form of energy. Triglycerides are blood fats. So you know that fat is stored energy, and fat stores triglycerides. Triglycerides are typically released in a controlled way into your blood so that all the cells of your body, with the exception of your brain, can break those triglycerides down and use them as an energy source. So some is good, but as I'm going to talk to you, too much is bad.
Do the amount of triglycerides that are in us fluctuate depending on how we eat or what we eat?
Oh, heavens, yes. So if you have a diet heavy in saturated or trans fat, your triglycerides will definitely be abnormal.
And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that. But if you eat a diet that is rich in mono and polyunsaturated fats, you cook with, say, olive oil or canola oil, and you have a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, then it's more likely your triglycerides will be normal.
Okay. Tell me something about olive oil. I had heard that olive oil is good for you, but if you use it to cook, that the heat changes it in a bad way. Is that true, or is that one of those Facebook rumors? What is that? What's the truth there?
I think it's a Facebook rumor.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, raw olive oil is certainly really good, but if we cook, we use olive oil.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. So what are the bad oils then? Olive oil and canola are good. What's bad? Like regular vegetable oil? That?
Well, corn oil and I would say coconut oil would be not as good. Yes.
Oh, really? And you hear so many things that people say are good with coconut oil.
Yeah. Well.
not true, huh?
Can't believe everything you hear.
No. We're in a world of information and misinformation, by the way. So. Yeah, that's why we like when we have experts on the show.
Why do people still? Why is there still an increase in heart disease when there are so many warning factors out there, especially like you, sir, when you're going on tours?
Well, people don't necessarily listen. So when we see the inflection point in the prevalence of heart disease in 2016, instead of it going down in the same trajectory it had been since 1980, but now all of a sudden it's going up, I think it simply reflects the fact that we're dealing with an epidemic in obesity, cigarette smoking, diabetes, poorly controlled cholesterol, poorly controlled hypertension, and people not exercising, watching too much NFL football, drinking too much. So these are all very significant contributors to the current upswing in the prevalence.
Is there an increase in stents being put in?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You see that not only in the U.S. but worldwide, yes.
Is there a way, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit, but hopefully this is not hard. Is there a way for you, with words, to allow us in our mind to have like an animated understanding of what happens? Is the triglycerides get into the blood, and how does that create a problem? What do we visualize? Are they piling up on the arteries, making it hard for the blood to get through? What exactly happens?
Yeah, so there are at least two things that happen. Number one, the triglycerides contain fatty acids, which when they enter the blood vessel wall, they can undergo a process called oxidation, which heightens inflammation within the blood vessel wall. And then second, the triglycerides are carried in what we call lipoproteins. These are vessels of triglycerides and cholesterol because the triglycerides and cholesterol don't dissolve in water, so they have to be carried in another form in order to be transported from tissue to tissue. So your liver will produce this lipoprotein that's carrying the triglycerides, and ultimately those lipoproteins containing triglycerides can wind up in the blood vessel wall and poison the blood vessel wall, leading to the formation of plaques.
Is this condition genetic?
Oh, it can be, yes. And that's a remarkably important point to make because some people do have genetically based elevations in their triglycerides. And what's remarkable is that these mutations that give rise to high triglycerides are uniformly associated with increased risk for cardiovascular disease. And so the genetics, but also the studies looking at triglycerides really, really draw the same conclusion. Let me tell you about a study that we presented at the American College of Cardiology last month, which I think accentuates the role of triglycerides in heart disease. We asked a very simple question, guys, and that was, if you take patients who have established heart disease or diabetes, so they're all high-risk patients, they're taking a statin drug so that their bad cholesterol is already well controlled. If you segregate them by whether their triglycerides are abnormal, meaning above 150 or less than 150, normal, what do you see in terms of a heart disease signal? So we included 46,000 patients, evenly split between men and women. So the data are generalizable to both genders. And what we found was that if your triglycerides were high, in the next 3.5 years, your risk of a heart attack was increased 32%.
Wow.
Your risk of a stroke, 14%. Your risk of developing heart failure, 20%. And this one is the most impressive. Your risk of needing a stent or a bypass increased almost 50%.
Gosh.
And I think that's very sobering. That's very sobering because the thought of a bypass, of being split open like a watermelon, really does not appeal to most people. And you also don't want stent after stent. And so the lesson here is that just because your bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, is well controlled, doesn't mean the job is done. Because if the triglycerides are still high, you're still leaving residual risk on the table, and that residual risk has consequences in terms of morbidity and even mortality.
Oh wow! So that means today we need to start eating healthier. It does. Am I right? Does that reverse it?
Yes, eating healthier, exercising, not smoking, all of those things contribute to lowering your triglycerides. And certainly we like to start there with lifestyle modification. And if that isn't enough or the patient lacks motivation, and I know you're surprised to hear that some patients lack motivation. In fact, if they lack motivation, then sometimes medication is necessary.
Yeah.
But certainly we like to try lifestyle modification first.
So how do we, okay, when you say, for example, and I'm going to get these words wrong, but when you say like polyunsaturated fats, I don't even know the words you said earlier, trans fats, that's almost like a foreign language to me. If you could tell me broccoli versus a hamburger, then I get it. Is that, is it laid out like that anywhere?
Yeah, you know what? You just did a great job of doing that. Because actually, if you think of processed food, all right, think of a TV dinner, think of most Chinese food that you find at a restaurant, these big chain Chinese foods, or let's say processed meat, that has a lot of saturated fat and often has trans fat. Now, in New York City, they tried to ban trans fat, okay? But food labels typically now will tell you how much saturated and trans fat is in the food contained within that container. Now, if you talk about polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fat, the oils, the good cooking oils, beneficial oils, typically will be mono or polyunsaturated. A hamburger is going to have saturated fat. A ribeye is going to have saturated fat. And that's the kind of fat that we consider to be detrimental.
And if we switched over to like salmon, did I say it, salmon, fish, does that make it? Is that a good way to get protein and not get the bad stuff?
It is, because the fish, salmon, and other oily fish, they contain what we call the omega-3 oils, and they're polyunsaturated, and they're very beneficial. They actually correlate with less risk for heart attacks and strokes.
All right, I got to really change my lifestyle, Robin. I'm going to go get some fish today for lunch. Doctor, thank you for taking your time to talk to us about this. I want to give a website out to the listeners. What's a good one?
American Heart Association, the very best.
Okay. Dr. Peter Toth, thank you for sharing your information.
Larry and Robin, thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Nobody does roses like Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens in Ocala. Right now, you'll see a huge selection of roses, all types, all colors, all sizes at Bob Wine's, and prices are the lowest of the season. Examples: drift roses,